recording it. Okay, so you should have gotten a note that it's being recorded. So hopefully we can play it back or put it up on the internet or whatever. I don't know. Clint's going to help me with that. And now I'm going to switch over to sharing the screen and bring up the presentation. So now everyone should see the presentation. Okay, we good? I can't hear you, but that's okay. All right.
Yep, we see it.
All right, good. All right. So when you talk, obviously, or video or something pops up here so I can see who else is talking. I should have all that here somewhere. Okay. All right. So this is the trip to here, Armenia, 2024, June the 1st to June the 10th. And we traveled, I was supposed to leave on a Thursday, guys, and got to the airport at Jacksonville, and the airplane was delayed 2.5 hours, so I would have missed all the connecting flights to leave out on Thursday and arrive on Friday, recover on Saturday, and then preach in church on Sunday. And but I missed that flight. I shouldn't say I missed it. They did not get here in time to pick me up to make the connections. So I delayed departure 2 days, left on Saturday and arrived on Sunday. Flights only go into, if you notice the map here, into that little yellow spot that is Armenia, and they only, because it's a small nation, not a lot of people and things like that, I think. There's flights only go in from Delta every other day. So I had to wait 2 days. They told me that I could go in early, but I would have to be stuck in Paris a day or stuck wherever, Amsterdam somewhere for a day. And I didn't think that was good. I thought it'd be much better to stay in my own bed and my own shower and all that stuff here at home. So I did that, stayed. And then once I got there, I contacted Marcia to have her extend my stay 2 days at the end. So I was 2 days short on the start, 2 days extended on the end. That way I could spend time ministering in the churches after the 5 days of training. So one thing I would want to say that was interesting to me on the trip was that I began to feel something spiritually that was going on. I don't know, I didn't understand it by any means. About 2 weeks beforehand, I began to really just to have a definite, I don't know, spiritual revelations or feelings or whatever you want to, ever how I want to try to express it. And it just, things were just off. It'd be the best. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know it was related to the trip, but you're going to see in a few minutes as to why that was happening. About a week before, or let me also take you back to this map. So looking at the map, Guy was supposed to drive down from. He actually lives in a city that's in this area outside of Moscow, and he was going to drive down through Moscow, take the road down that we did to Rostov last year, and continue the trip on down in through Georgia, and then into Armenia. And he was going to bring 4 guys with him. 2 were trainers that have already been trained, and 2 that were going to be students for the class. He also was going to bring with him Nastya, who would be my interpreter. She interprets from English to Russian and has worked with me for 10, 15 years now and knows me and my accent and everything well. So she makes it easy for me. So she was also going to come with them. But like a week beforehand, I just 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, the Lord just woke me up and said, "No, call him and tell him to drive. I mean, tell him not to drive, but to fly." So I did. I called and told Gita to get tickets and just fly everybody down. And so they did. Um, Also, there was the guy that we worked with, the pastor that we worked here in Rostov, Pastor Savak. You'll see pictures of him. He had the connections in Armenia with the Church Armenia. he was actually a pastor of an Armenian congregation in Russia. So that's how I made the connections. And so he was going to come also. And about 2 days after I made the conversation with um, Guy, found out there was a huge flood, 70-year record flood in Armenia, in the town that we were going to go to. And because of that, Guy would, if they would have left and driven, they would not have been able to come, would not have been able to pass through that town, would not have been able to get to the training. And so consequently, we had to change towns, relocate what we were going to do, find another pastor, find another church, and all that stuff. And Savak, he said that he was not going to come, even though these were his contacts. He was not going to come. And the reason for that is that he wanted us to spend the money for his airplane ticket, if you will, and give it to the church there where the flood happened. But after a couple of days, I called Guy back and I said, no, Guy, we need him to come. And so we convinced him to be able to come and join us. So, all right. So then all of those things were going on. So began to see that the Lord was really intervening in the trip and making things come together and happen. So the in the airport in Paris, this guy here already showed up, and we had a couple-hour layover and sat and talked to him. And he was an American, but he was from Armenia, so I had the chance to share the gospel with him, and he gave his heart to Christ. So that was my first convert going in. And now this brings up the Armenian map, and you'll see it quite a few times because this city up here, Alaverdi, this is the city we were supposed to go to. And you can see that it is on a river that flows through there. And this is extremely mountainous. You'll see pictures of it. I have, as we traveled around, you'll see that process. So we had to switch from Alaverdi, and again, you can see the road, the red road runs through there. Well, it was blocked. The road was eroded on the side of a mountain, sides of mountains, and bridges were out and all that stuff. So we flew directly into the capital, Yerevan, here, and you can see the airport symbol, of course. And here's Mount Ararat, just off in the distance. And Mount Ararat is very close to the city we were going to go to, which is Artashat. So that's where we relocated our training to. So this is landing in Yerevan, and that's Mount Ararat. And you can, let me back up. You can see the distance here. It's roughly, I would say, 20 miles away from Mount Ararat, 15 probably at the most. And you can still see how huge that is. It's at 16,000 feet elevation. This is Ararat here, and it's above the clouds. And then this is Little Ararat. And so I want to say to everybody here that you are from Ararat. Now, some of you guys have been through my conversations about this, so you will remember or know that, of course, Noah landed on Ararat, and so Ararat, Mount Ararat was in Armenia for thousands of years, part of their nation. They have a great history, and I'll try to limit some of the conversation on history, but in 301, they became the first Christian nation. The king declared the nation Christian. That's before Rome was declared Christian, and it's really a neat history. When you go there, the people say to you, welcome home. They don't say, I'm glad you're here. They say, welcome home, because they know you're from Armenia. Now, the Russians, Putin and specifically, redivided the land borders and took Ararat and gave it to Turkey. Needless to say, the Armenians are very upset and have been about that whole process. They don't care they despise Putin, but They love Russian people. That's not an option because remember, they were Russian. They were U.S. What is it? CIS. They were USSR CIS for 70 years. So about half the population still speaks Russian, and the rest of the population, of course, and I'm sure that half too also speaks Armenian, and they use the Armenian alphabet, which is kind of looks Cyrillic. Uh, I think that's the right word. So anyway, so when I landed, looked out the airport window and saw Mount Ararat, I immediately knew what was going on spiritually. That it was this nation has been so played such a significant part in the rest of the world, and then Christianity in the rest of the world. That there's a great history and participation by the people here. They seem to be in their culture a bit conservative. They're not overbearing conservative. They're just maybe like we were in the 50s. Uh, People dress without a lot of skin showing. People dress and talk nice to each other, address each other, very polite. I was surprised. I just was taken back by how welcoming they were. So then I drove from, I didn't drive, sorry. I was driven from Yerevan to Artishat, and so then I'm looking down every street in Artishat, every street, of course, facing that direction. Mount Ararat is visible. And it's like I just can't comprehend it. But it's funny because the people there are just like the people that live white, like you. You said you hadn't even been down to the ocean for 3 months or something, and 3 weeks, 3 months, I don't remember. But it's like me. Marcia and I haven't been to the ocean probably in 3 years. So the people here just take it for granted. But there it is in all of its glory. It's huge. You can't, on this, I don't know where the ark is located. There are images that are from satellites that say it's there and you can see it. It's covered in snow most of the year. Now you have to remember, this is the 1st of June. So this is hot summer. It was 105 degrees, but the humidity was almost zero. So you sweat, but you weren't wet. And you had to drink plenty of water to keep hydrated. So beautiful. Every road that we pass, I would be looking down that road. Guy flew in with the 4 guys that I mentioned and Nastia. And one of the fun things was that this is a mulberry tree. Now, I've heard of mulberry bushes, but this is a mulberry tree. And you can see here on the ground, um, the mulberry fruit that just falls off of these trees. They're everywhere. They just grow wild everywhere there. And they're just absolutely delicious mulberries. And I had never, honestly, I don't think I'd ever seen a mulberry. But so we picked some. Here's some white mulberries. They come in pink, black, or white, pink, and black. And the Shirley, the black mulberries are sweeter and better than a blackberry, if you can comprehend that. Blackberries are my favorite, but these black mulberries, they won me. I'm a win. If I could find them, I'm going to get them, but I don't know that they would grow here. I doubt it. But
Len, we should have kept our mulberry tree in our backyard.
there you go.
We got rid of it recently.
Oh no.
It was tearing up the sidewalk. So
yeah, it's what they call invasive. It just continues to spread and grow everywhere. But did you get fruit off of yours?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
I never got any mulberry jelly. What happened?
I should have kept my mouth shut.
We got very little. It was after the squirrels got it all.
Yeah.
Squirrels took a lot.
Yeah.
They had trees everywhere, and you just walk along and on the ground, just picking off the mulberries. On the off the tree. You just reach up and pick them off, and everybody was doing it. All right, so this is the church we were working with, Living Faith Church in Arteshot, and main sanctuary is huge, complex. I was kind of surprised at the size of the building, and the worship center looked like it could hold, I would think maybe packed around 500-600 people pretty easily, because it went away from you. This is the front entrance. We were over here on the left in this, I think it's Sunday school classrooms. I never really knew, never really asked what was they were using the rooms for specifically. Maybe there were a couple of ministry rooms for other ministries, and you'll see that in a minute. But do notice one thing up here. This solar panels, they are very aggressive in having solar panel electric production for all of the houses and buildings and offices and stuff like that. I was really surprised at the extent that they were had that type of utility available. This is the pastor that we were working with, Pastor Hatchick. And now some of you guys may recognize this name. Dean, you may recognize this name. Anybody? DeCaloro, DeCaloris. What are some of the other names? Trey Deos. Not, what is it? The Road to Manea, Road to, what is it? Where the guys met Jesus?
Yeah, it's
Emmaus.
Dolores is the Catholic version, and the Walk to Emmaus is the one we usually use in the Methodist Church.
Yes, Walk to
Yeah,
Emmaus. That's it.
Oh,
It's the same. This is all this the same ministry. Kairos in the prison.
mhm.
This is the Kairos ministry. The same thing. They have this ministry operating in their church, and you can see the different behind them, the different I don't know, sessions or whatever you would call it that they participate and do. Yeah, I like the guy. He was pretty good. And then this of course is Nastya, the interpreter from Russia that took our training when she says she was 17. I'm still thinking she was 14 when she took it. And that's been 14, 15 years ago now, and maybe close to 20 years ago. And she is an English teacher. She, when I met her, she did well with English. So of course I grabbed her and had her work with me and continue as much as I can every year to have her interpret for me. This little girl is Emily, and she's the pastor's granddaughter. She's, I think, 10. I kept saying 10. I'm not sure. It might be 12, but I'm thinking she's 10. And this is a banner here, which is Dean is Acts 1:8 in Armenian. So I thought that was kind of neat. Great Commission. So they had her picture taken in front of it. By the way, Emily adopted me. So you'll see her hanging out with me. We still communicate. So when I meet a young kid like that, or teenager, I like to ask them what are their plans are for their future. What are they thinking? What are they, even at 10, 12 years old, what are you thinking? She said, well, I want to be a doctor. I said, wow, that's great that she knows that already. And I said, what kind of doctor, Dean? She said cardiologist. She actually said heart doctor, but cardiologist. She knows at 10 speaks fluent Armenian, of course, fluent Russian, and about 50% English at 12, 10, 12, whatever it is. So she caught my attention quickly. She's a good girl, good little girl. Keep track of her. And then this is, like I was mentioning to you guys, the spiritual heritage of Mount Ararat. And you can see how it's above the level of the clouds. And there's a huge valley here that runs down the front of it towards this direction. And it's about 5 miles away from where we are. And these are normal, fairly normal, typical housing you see in Russia, see around the world. It's not junky. If you notice the streets, relatively clean, not a lot of trash in the streets and things like that. And then this is Pastor Guy and Nastya over here. This is Pastor Savak, the Armenian pastor from Rostov in Russia. These are the other two trainers, Sergey and Dima, that are in Guy's church in Ivanova that he brought with him. The two students are not here. I'll show you them in a few minutes. Okay, so now these are the students. All right, now I want your help on this, guys. So you can go back to turn your audio on. All right, so this is the students. They're in no particular order. So I need help. What is her name?
Sazine.
That's an R,
Oh,
but you were close.
Serene.
Serene. Serene.
Okay.
No, so you're close. Listen, I've gotten where I can pronounce Russian names pretty good, but these I could not do. All right, what about this guy? Come on, jump in, you guys. You're going to be wrong. It doesn't make any difference.
Knuckle. Hakab.
It's actually Jacob,
Okay.
but it's pronounced Hakab. You got with that Russian kind of Hakab.
Hakab.
I kept saying Hakab. Okay, I over accented it. They'd always laugh because I never could do his name right.
Hakab.
So right, he's a Yankees fan.
Yeah. How about this one?
Guyani.
Guyani.
Arthur.
It is Arthur, but not pronounced that way. Artur. Artur. I couldn't do his name well either. Armand, that one's pretty easy. Dima, this is the Russian guy. Misha, another Russian guy. Michael, or Misha is the nickname. You get everybody can guess this one.
Daniel.
Yeah. All right, what about this one?
Any-
Arpini.
Arpine.
Pina.
Arpine. She was the best scoring student.
Garnick.
Garnick. You guys getting the hang of it now. Garnick.
Jake.
Yuck.
Hike. Hike.
That's hard. It was, I just couldn't. It sounded like you were clearing your throat. And Hark.
Right.
Yeah. Hark. The names were just too hard for me. And then Hachik, the pastor. When he was in the class, he unfortunately had pastoral duties and missed a day and a half of the classes. But he passed. He was kind of the minimum passing grade. I had one guy that several that didn't complete the class, and then I had one that didn't pass. And this is the pastor's wife. You get this one,
Kelly.
Nellie, obviously. And what is her name?
Arabic.
Arivek. Arivek. Everything is like hard. Arivek. I'm going to tell you a little story about her in a minute.
University.
There's another Artur.
Arthur.
Yep. Yep. And so this is the classroom that we were in for the week. And you see that's the banner behind us that I had the picture in front of earlier. Two Russian guys over here. Guy's teaching in Russian. And she is interpreting into Armenian. And The two other Russian guys are back here in the back, and of course, Nastya. I'm taking the picture, obviously, but the reason I kind of bring this up is that the lessons, about 45 minutes to an hour in length, then add 15 minutes in length because of the because of the interpretation from Russian to he's speaking Russian, she's going Russian to Armenian. Well, when I would teach, they would have to go, Nashi would be up here, and so I'd speak in English, she would translate that, interpret that into Russian, speak that, then she would take the Russian and interpret that then to Armenian. So my hour lesson would go about an hour and a half, and it began to be problems with trying to get all the lessons in every day. So I taught some of the initial lessons and some of the closing lessons, but I let Guy and Pastor Savak do the teaching. And here's Savak at this end of the room now, the other end of the room, looking back this way, and he's now teaching in Armenian. So it went relatively quickly. That was good. And sometimes it was this is a covered like patio area, and we would sit out here and teach out here, as well as have tea or coffee, cookies, those kinds. They're really big on cookies and tea, and really they're big on coffee. And the coffee is I'm not big on it myself, but how do you call that coffee that is so strong it's like a full cup of coffee in a quarter of a cup? What is that?
Espresso.
Espresso. That stuff would, man, I tell you what, it'd wake you up. That's what they like to drink, and I would make them make me black tea, which I like. I like the black tea. I can't do that strong caffeine coffee stuff. But it was good. Nice time outside. Like I said, it was 105, but the wind kind of blowing, breeze a little bit. It's not bad. No humidity, so it was quite bearable. Nice. Everybody liked being outside. And this is where we're from. So I already pulled that on you guys. That's the Mount Ararat. And that's kind of the better picture of how it feels that it is right there at the end of that street. You know what I'm saying? The other pictures don't quite show the dimensions of that thing well. And I would use that a lot of times since I've been back with people and saying, hey, I know I like at the airports or whatever. I say, hey, do you know where you're from? I just came from where you were from. And they said, yeah. I said, yeah, Armenia. And the girl would say, no, I'm from Texas. And I said, no, you're from Armenia. I'm sorry. And then I would work my conversation around sharing the gospel with them. So that went well. We serve lunch outside, like I mentioned. This is a typical lunch. That's my plate. I'm gonna give you a zoom in on it. This is my favorite meal that I would really enjoyed eating. This is fresh bread that they cook in a round loaf every day. Many, you'd bring in a dozen of those every meal. Everybody tear them up and eat them. And they'd put cucumbers in it and fresh tomatoes, just delicious. And then goat cheese. There's some goat cheese sitting over here, I noticed. And you put that together. That was absolutely scrumptious. I loved it. Doesn't sound too good though, does it? What do you think, guys?
Sounds good to me.
Good.
Oh,
was-
yeah,
It was
Sounds
really
delicious
good.
to me.
especially if it's fresh.
Yeah, it's all fresh. You can see the tomatoes, how ripe they are. And the cucumbers really too. And then it's putting the teams together to go out to the streets. Guy's helping to organize it. Savak's this is his first time. We taught him when he was in Rostov, but this was his first time really being. He was a student in Rostov, so this is his first time kind of being in the leadership aspect of it, and so it was a little different. He was trying to figure some things out, but it was still good. He did well. And so we go to the street, and we hired I shouldn't say hired. We were able to acquire an interpreter that goes from English straight to Armenian. So I did not need Nasha to interpret for me on the streets. And Nasha is a trainer. So I was able to give her a team. She took out the pastor's wife here, and so she was training her. And then this young guy gave his heart to the Lord. And then this is another one, another young girl that Nasha led to the Lord in the training process. And then this is in the park, and we're sharing the gospel in the park. This is one of the trainers sharing with this young boy. And you can see it's quite green, very pleasant. And the shade was a lot better than in the sun, I can tell you that. And sharing again in this same park area. You'll find if you go with me, as you remember, some of you guys, I like to go to the park just because people are just sitting on the bench and they have time to talk. They're not impatient in most cases, and they will just yak with you so you can share the gospel easily. They're very welcoming. And of course, this is Emily, and she went with us and she led 2 people to the Lord at 10-year-old, 12-year-old. I still think she's 10, but good, sweet little girl. Picked up the whole process very quickly. And you see she has a track in her hand because she missed some of the classes with going to school and stuff. I gave her a track and had her learn it from a track, and she picked it right up. Smart girl. So this is downtown. This is an interesting building downtown. I didn't really go into this building, but this is relatively typical Russian architecture. And from the 80s and 90s, and you'll see these, I'm pretty sure this is not what you would call a hotel. These are all most likely single one room, one bedroom, a bathroom, and a kitchen, and then also has a living room. Now, the living room typically is the bedroom. They'll have a sofa that will pull out for the bed. So I think these are all one bedroom. They call them one bedroom or one room apartments. And as you can tell, this downstairs is condemned. It's closed off, the glass is broken, and etc. And this was opened up. I saw people up here in these flats. They call them flats. In these flats, there's laundry that's hanging up there and stuff like this. So if you were a refugee and you came into this city, Ottershot, that you could stay in this condemned housing. There's no water, there's no sewer, there's no electricity, but you could stay there. And so how does that compare to how we treat our refugees? Well, you come stay at the Hilton and we pay you $5,000 a month and give you phone cards, and we'll put you through college, your kids through college for free. I think I remember that's how our original people that came into the United States, I think that's how they were treated too.
Oh,
Moving along. All right, this is some pictures down on the street so that you see kind of the business shops, and this is fairly typical Russian, but again, it's extremely clean area. I see this white powder here. This is from this tree, which is I'm having to think, I'm having to remember the, I got, oh, not dogwood. I'll have to think about that. But it collects this fuzz, and the fuzz is ignitable. You can light it and it burns like a wick. No one keeps saying dogwood. That might be right. Geese out sharing the gospel and getting some people saved. And you see they got stuff in here and all sorts of just normal things. Okay, so I found a little area. This is a school, a public school. And I didn't know that at the time. And I just sort of turned the corner and walked up into this little breezeway. And there's some benches. Like I said, I like to witness to in the benches parks, that kind of area. And these two young guys were there. This guy's a high schooler, a junior. This guy might be a sophomore or maybe a freshman, not sure. Their connection is that they both play guitar on the weekends. Now I didn't ask where they play. Maybe at a bar. I don't know. Not sure. But they've got those connections. And so I began to talk to them. And again, I'm asking them, well, tell me about, who what you do, what you want to do. What are you going to do after high school, that kind of stuff. Well, this guy told me that he was, when I asked about his plans, he said, do you want my short-term goals or do you want my long-term goals? Clint, that impressed me when that guy asked that kind of question, because he could understand English, so I could talk directly to him. His friend, English was not as good, so he would do some of the interpreting back and forth for us. His friend was not as focused as he was. But this young boy, later I asked him, tell me about your church, your background there. Well, he was Jesus Christ Church of Latter-day Saints. So I didn't say anything to him negatively about it. And his friend didn't go to church much at all. So I ended up sharing the gospel with both of them, and they both gave their hearts to Christ. And this guy had to be prompted by his friend to answer questions and respond. So it worked well. Well, I like this park area, and like I said, there were people, adults going by and kids going by all the time. So I went back to it the second day, and guess who was sitting at the bench the second day? This guy's aunt. This is his aunt. She's sitting there. And so I was talking to her. Now, this time she spoke Armenian, so I had my interpreter that went from English to Armenian. And of course, I had my helper person that she could do the same. She could do English to Armenian a bit, about 50%, but she was a good interpreter. So I used her. And this aunt, she was telling me the story. She said, you're the guy that my nephew met last night. I said, yes. And she said, he came home all excited, telling us all about you and talking to you and meeting you and everything. And I said, well, that is great. How neat is that? And so ended up sharing the gospel with her. She gave her heart to Christ. She also was a Mormon. And we took time and prayed for the students. And this is Nasha praying for that Arivek. She had some medical issues that were going on, Dean, but she's okay. Don't worry about her. She's okay. We're just praying for her. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a few minutes. And so here's the whole class, all the students and all the trainers. And of course, Emily. Now this is the house where we stayed here. It's a 2-level apartment. It had three bedrooms, a large living room area, and a kitchen on this end. And I got one of the bedrooms, Savak got a bedroom, and 2 of the other Russian guys got bedrooms, and Guy slept on the sofa, and 2 other guys that were there slept on the floor. They had a foam mat and slept on the floor. But this is the construction that was, and there's an apartment, same duplicate upstairs. And this with the entrance in the back. This is typical architecture that you see in Armenia. And they're using their natural stone. This is not brick. This is stone that they cut. And they don't paint it. This is natural 2-color stone that they use. And then this is a cement building that they're constructing here off of the main street. The main street runs to the front of this, and this is a side street that we're on. And I don't know what this spells here. That looked like a restaurant. And they will probably put a facade over this concrete block, which is going to have that same probably Armenian feature. Hang on one second here, guys. Let me find what I'm looking for. Hang on a second. Okay, so that's the housing that's in the area. Apartments, those were rental unit things. And then again, this is down every street down, just looking down the street, there's Ararat, and you'll see different things here. This is Ararat over here in the corner. And this is the city kind of square area. And you'll see the cars. They have cars that drive on the right side and cars that drive on the left side. Of course, their roads are Russian road driving, so it's normal like America, but the steering can be on either side potentially. And but cars and all look actually fairly good shape. That's like what they call a Lada, which is made in Russia, and you'll see other other kind of cars, Chinese, a lot of Chinese cars. And this is one of my kind of my favorite photos here. You've got this one day, and I forget what it was, a Thursday or something, but there were no clouds. And a little cool front had come through and the clouds were gone. So it was a great picture of Mount Ararat. And this to the left is Little Mount Ararat. So this is Big Mount Ararat, Little Mount Ararat. I didn't know that they were side by side like that. Didn't know that. And I kept talking to everybody, please take me where I can take a picture of Mount Ararat without the phone wires, electric wires, and everything being in the way. I want a nice, beautiful, clean picture of it. Of course, that's very challenging because it's so high and usually there's clouds. So, but this clear day, man, I wanted to get on that. I wanted this pipe that you see here that runs through here. That is a gas line that's provided by the government. So you can have government gas, but that's how they run the gas. Now, I don't know why they run it above ground, except that my thinking is the ground freezes. And so the gas might quote unquote freeze. I don't know. But you see the same in Russia. But beautiful, just beautiful. And this is old style Russian housing, roofing. I don't know anything about this particular building. Looks like a house to me. And I don't know why, if dilapidated, I don't know, but you'll see these same metal roofs and things like that. Okay, who knows what this says? This is in Armenian. It says Wildberry. Have you ever seen a Wildberry store? Anybody ever seen a Wildberry store? Dean, and you're traveling?
Oh,
A Wildberry store, I've seen them in quite a few places in traveling. I'm trying to think if I've ever seen one in the US, but it's a store where if you're going to sell something like on Amazon, or you're going to sell something and you wanted to not have the person meet you at your home because you're afraid they're going to come up and rob you or whatever, you give them this address. And you can actually leave it there, have the price, and somebody will, picks up your money for a fee, picks up the money from the guy and exchanges the gifts or item with them. So you're not in the picture at all. So that's Wildberries, and they have these, again, I've seen them quite a few places around the world as I've traveled. But that's how I knew what it said, a Wildberry. That was across the street from where we were staying. Some pictures of just downtown. These are those mulberry trees just growing wild. Looks like a normal kind of downtown. I think the city's like 1.2 million. I may be wrong about that, but and you see some fairly modern looking cars. And these are the Ladas or Fiats and things like old European kind of cars. And you'll get minstrel people kind of out on the street sometimes singing, and doing different things. And they have these scooters just like we have them that you can rent with a credit card. And there's Mount Ararat again, and this is fairly typical Russian construction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stories. No elevator. If you're at 5 stories in your each flat, if you will, if you're a 5-story flat, you don't have to have an elevator. So they would kind of limit them to 5, but anything above 5 is supposed to have an elevator that works. This is more flats over here, just a little bit different design, but you see those the panels up on top, solar panels. And they'll also have water panels, that water heater panels. They'll have those up on top too. And you'll see some newer construction. Looks nice with the stucco front to it. Again, notice the streets are very clean. I'm always struck with the size of Ararat being at the end of the road. There's I think that's a Mercedes coming at us. And you'll notice, if I go back, you'll notice these birds. You'll see a little bit more about those in a minute. But you'll notice these birds are big storks. There's some more flying around here. This is that clear day, and I just wanted to get a better picture, the best picture I could get of Mount Ararat. And if you guys get interested, this is a song by an Armenian lady artist and her band. And Here's to You, Ararat, which they're singing because remember, they lost Ararat. It's Turkish. So she's, in a way, she's pining for the return of Mount Ararat. Now, I didn't pick that up in the song. I just love the pictures in the background. I was there where this is up and down the street where they shoot this picture and everything. If you like it, I can send you that video, the link for that video. I really liked it. I was impressed by it. And then this is Arvek. Now, she showed up late. I'm sorry, she was there, could not show up for the final exam on Friday. She had a doctor's appointment, was going to have surgery, Dean. So I don't know what kind of surgery. And often you don't want to ask. So I gave her exam early. She passed, she did well. And she went to the doctor's office, had her surgery. She walked back. Now, I don't know how far, but she walked back to the church and received her certificate. And she was very happy to tell us that she shared the gospel and got the doctor and her nurse saved. She was really excited about it, as were we, and as was everybody else. And so anyway, this is now the clinic is over, and we begin to do. Remember, I mentioned that I had Marcia extend the stay a couple of days, and so we began to do some traveling. And one of the things we did was we went to a monastery that is the closest to the border. I'm thinking, guys, that this is the border here. I may be wrong. I'm not sure. That may be the border. This definitely is Turkey over here because you could see some mosques and things like that in the distance. And so this is little Ararat, and big Mount Ararat, of course, is covered in clouds this particular day. A beautiful shot. And then this is the monastery that overlooked Ararat. And this was, who knows what this is? This was on the side wall of that monastery.
Sundial.
It's a sundial, and that's how they told time. Of course, they didn't have eye watches and things like that back then, Clint. So they had this on the sidewall of the sidewall, not flat on the ground, so to speak, but a sidewall that was, the wall was arranged in such a way that it always had sun from east to west. So they could tell what time it is. So they know when to hold services. That was kind of neat. And this was inside the sanctuary. That's kind of a typical cross that they have in Armenia. And one other neat thing that they have is that these water fountains are everywhere, free water everywhere for everyone. And this is that sanctuary, the corner where that sundial is located. This is the outside wall of that fort sanctuary, and those are not cannons; those are telescopes, so you can look at Mount Ararat. And they have this I don't know what you call this, guys. This, it looks I don't know how to say, I never really could figure it out, but it's artistry that is actually carved stone. It's not how do I say, not clay. It's not printed or anything like that, or pressed or anything from from clay. It's not. It's carved stone, and you'll see these uh, around all in most of the special ministerial places around monasteries and things like that. You'll see these same things, and there were like 4 of them here, different designs. And it's just so intricate. I just couldn't. I was very impressed with them. And guys, I know I'm getting close to 8 o'clock, and I've got a little bit more time on my part. And if you guys need to go, you're welcome to it. No problem. Thank you. Thank you for coming as much as you could. And this is some modern architecture restaurant. You see Ararat in the background. There's we're leaving, heading down the road. And if you go to that video, you'll see almost that same picture. So we went back to Yerevan, and this is where some of the history begins to play in. This is the memorial to 2 disciples, Thaddeus and Bartholomew. Now, guys, I haven't gone back to my history. Dean, maybe you can help me with some of the history stuff. But Thaddeus and Bartholomew were sent there by the Lord, and they were martyred. And you can see this represents the disciples taking the gospel to the king, and the kingdom of Armenia was almost as big as the Ottoman Empire at one time. This is a portrayal of one of the guys. I don't know, and this is the other one. Don't know which ones. If I could read Armenian, I'd tell you, but I don't know. There's some of the structure in the capital, in the same area. And they were doing some renovation in this area. You can see them up here on the top, refurbishing the artwork. And then this is Pastor Savak and a pastor friend of his from the Armenian church, Armenian Apostolic Church. And they're a separate denomination, and he's building this building, and the Armenian Orthodox Church doesn't like it. Doesn't like the architecture, so they're holding up his permits and stuff. In the capital, some of the very nice architecture. And this is more, again, common Russian looking construction, 10, 15, 20 stories high. And you get into Moscow, you can see them 40 stories high. And this is a soldier that there's always been conflict. As we look at the next time we look at the map of Armenia, you'll see Armenia is surrounded by Muslims, by the Turks or Muslims. And there was a great genocide in like 1914, 17, where 1.5 million Armenians were killed by the Turks, by the Muslims. But this represents, I think, an earlier time frame, and I don't know when. And this Armenian soldier rose up and killed the Turks, took back Armenia from the Turks, and so he's memorialized there. This is again downtown Yerevan, the capital. The capital buildings. And so now we were going to go from Yerevan up the road here to this area. And we visited this monastery. I can't pronounce it, sorry. But it's near a large gorge of the Kasaka River, or whatever how you say it, where worship continued 24/7 for guess how many years? Guess how many years, guys? Come on. Dwight, you still there?
1,200.
1,200 years. Oh my goodness, 24/7? Not just on Sunday morning for 20 minutes now. Anybody else?
Was it 700 years?
700 years.
Wow.
I mean, 24/7. Can you imagine that? Praise and worship in that little monastery for 700 years nonstop. The people that were there and performed, and generations that performed it, they're buried under the footsteps leading into that monastery. They didn't want any notoriety. They wanted to just be buried there on the grounds, and people walk on them. That's what they wanted. It was pretty amazing. Some more of those stones, and there were weddings going on at this monastery all the time. And this is that gorge. It reminded me of the Grand Canyon. It was so huge, and there is a river down here, the stream that runs through that. And I noticed something over here, and I circled it. I couldn't figure out what it was, and I used my camera and zoomed in. It's another wedding going over there on that point. Thought that was kind of neat. Weddings just going on all the time at that location. This is a broader picture of that monastery. And then this was carved into one of the columns in that monastery, the 3 crosses. This is inside the sanctuary here. Whoops. Inside the sanctuary where the worship continued in this little chamber. That's it. That's the sanctuary. And that's the altar area. Thought you'd like to look at that. And then this is the pastor. I met him when I was there. I didn't. He didn't speak English. I didn't speak Armenians, but we shook hands. And this is his Bible. These are his Bibles. And this is the prayer that was going on outside that little sanctuary room. And I don't know what you call it out here, and that's a pool of water. And they stick candles in that pool, and it burns down and doesn't burn anything. It just burns out when it hits the water. And this lady was there praying. She didn't know it. I took her picture. But what was interesting to me was that she did not have a head covering, and she was wearing pants. Now you might say, well, oh, good grief. No, you don't see that in Russia. The ladies are not allowed in the sanctuary unless they have their head covered, kind of like Dwight right now. And they have they wear skirts. They're not allowed to wear pants. So that was kind of neat. And she was very solemn in her prayer. That was neat picture. And then as we traveled on, I wanted to say that there were crosses everywhere we went. And we drove up to Alaverdi. This is the city now that was flooded. So we wound our way through the mountains. I have no idea how we got there. I drew a straight line. That's all I know. Going to Alaverdi. This is the mountain area now that we're passing through. And you can see the elevation is so high. This is June, and it's still snow everywhere. Now this is the foothills of those mountains, and no snow, but the use of luscious green. I'm sorry, went the wrong way. Here we go. And these are the roads, and I don't know how to kind of compare this. It's going through this twisty turning road and coming back down over this way, and these are green hills, and there's cattle out here and sheep and stuff that they're taking care of. But look at it, it's like the Smoky Mountains. You've got the high elevation all around us. And that's like a village off in the distance. Beautiful, just beautifully green. Now this is Verde. And you've got part of the city up here on the top of this mountain. And this is the river. You'll see it better in a minute. This is the river that runs through the city, and it flooded the banks and flooded this. And the bridges that crossed that river were taken out. They were not all of them, but many of them severely damaged. So the city was separated, and you can see the beginning of the erosion here coming down the road. And this is our road. It took out, ate out, the erosion ate one of the lanes in many of the places. So you could only pass, when cars were going one way and then they'd stop and go the other way. So it was a mess. Now you can see the river a little bit better in this shot but this is like 10 days later. So they said, no, this is all calmed down. It's normal now. I'm thinking I wouldn't want to go down that thing on any kind of tube. That's for sure. This is just more of the housing. And you can see the crosses on the top of the mountains everywhere. It's a very historically religious place. This is the church we were going to be in, and this is the pastor. He invited us to come on Saturday night for me to speak to the leadership, and I thought it was going to be about. He told me 5 to 8 people, and it ended up being 17. Well, I asked him how many in the church were just maybe question the surety of their salvation. 15 of them raised their hands. So I ended up sharing the gospel. They all prayed to receive Christ. Of the 15, they all prayed. And that's Savak that's with us. And this is his family church. This is where he's from. And he introduced me on Sunday morning, and I've had shared about take that mountain, Caleb, kind of a spirit to take the mountain. And they all came forward to take the mountains in their lives. It was a good time. They all came forward and prayed, so it was neat. And then we headed back. Now, again, this is 10 days or so after the flood. You can see the rubbish piled up on the side over here, but does that look like that's something you want to go white water rafting down? I don't think so. And we went from there, from Verde, back down to this city called Savannah at the Savannah Lake. And Guy had gone one direction. I went with Savak to his home church, and we met back at Savannah. And again, just beautiful. But look, there's snow on the sides of these mountains. That's the elevation that we're running at. And this is Lake Savannah, freshwater lake, beautiful freshwater lake. And then from there back to Yerevan, and guess who's waiting on us? Mount Ararat's waiting on us, and just enjoyed being there back with him. And Savak had his brother meet us at the airport to see me off, and it was good to meet him. And then back to Paris and then to Atlanta, about 25-hour flight. We had shared the gospel 57 times. We had 126 people that heard the gospel. 100 people gave their hearts to Christ. 79% of the people we talked to. And we certified 11 people. And I just want to say something about these numbers here for just a minute. 79, that's almost, you can really just say 4 out of 5 people we talked to gave their hearts to Christ. In churches, the leaderships. I got a chance to speak to a bishop over the apostolic churches there, and told him that we were seeing about 75% of the people in his congregations getting saved, 75% or more people on the streets getting saved. He got real quiet. I could say he got upset. I think he got upset, but he got real quiet. He didn't really want to talk to me much after that, because he found out that so many of his people were not saved. He didn't like that. And but it was a great opportunity. Looks like we're going to plan on going back next year, working with the churches, working with the the churches that Guy had trained and and worked with after I left him, and that I had worked with. We'll probably pull them all together, maybe 5 or 6 churches, and train them next year, and maybe have 20 to 30 or maybe 35 people that we could train. So we'll see how that works. We're looking forward to going back and helping in Armenia. It's a very rich place. The people are very sweet, very humbling. You'd love them. Believe me, you would love them. So, all right. You've been mute the whole time, so you can tell me whatever you want. Any questions? What did you think? By the way, I'm gonna stop the recording.